Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidagena yopakaruttam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranatosmi stuve Patanjalim Vyasam Shankaram cha munitrayam kartra sutrasya bhashyasya kramat vivaranasya cha. So whenever we resume the Yoga Sutra class after some interval, 2-3 weeks, I normally give a brief description of these 2 verses of invocation because they are very important from the yoga philosophy point of view, and then do some kind of a revision. That's how we proceed. So these 2 verses, just in brief, it's some kind of an invocation to the great philosopher Patanjali and also the 2 great commentators who expounded his system maybe after about 1500 years. So the first verse is Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya vaitikena. So this verse describes Patanjali as a great, what you call in American English, cleaning guy. That's what exactly what it is. You know what it is. He cleanses, he purifies, he refines our words, mind and speech. That's his great contribution. So he wrote a very famous commentary on Sanskrit language. This is called Patanjala Mahabhashyam. So it is in metrical form in verses. In its full form, it could be as big as several volumes of Encyclopedia Britannica volume put together. Such a huge mass of writing. That is supposed to be the greatest and most profound philosophical interpretation of grammar, or rather exposition of grammar as a great philosophical system. It is called Patanjala Mahabhashya, the last word in philology and linguistics. Huge book, you can imagine his great contribution. Chomsky and other grammarians refined or expounded American English 40 years back. And Fowler and Hornby and other linguists interpreted British English in the early decades of 20th century. Patanjali wrote his famous philosophical treatises, not one, huge, in metrical form. The whole volume, the whole work may be as big as a few volumes of Encyclopedia Britannica. Huge volumes. Like Chambers' Dictionary, a few volumes put together. So that was his contribution towards refining, processing, cleaning, purifying speech. That's why, vacham malam, vacham means words, the undesirable aspects of human speech. How to use language properly. So that is first contribution, cleaning, cleaning the dirt and filth of human speech. Refining human speech. So second contribution is, of course, that's more important. He wrote this Yoga Sutras, altogether 195 sutras, which he wrote to purify, to explain how to purify human mind. Chittasya malam means the dirt and filth, the undesirable things that get accumulated in the mental system, and how to refine our character, how to change our attitudes, how to purify our emotions, and how to start a new life by meditation, by turning our attention inward into our own mind, and how to process the mind and purify the mind. So the yoga, that's why, chittasya mala means the undesirable, accumulated, undesirable vrittis, samskaras, impressions, attitudes and emotions, how to remove them and purify them. So that's first, second contribution. Third contribution, he wrote a very famous commentary on Ayurveda. He wrote his famous book on Sutras, very famous. So huge contribution he made. I mean, how to purify the body. It's a work on medical science. So these are three great contributions of Patanjali, the author of yoga, philosophy and yoga system, of which the modern Hatha Yoga, the physical aspect of yoga, is only a very, very small fraction. The second verse is paying tributes, honoring the three great philosophers. Patanjali, who wrote the Sutras, the original text, the Bible of yoga, and then Vyasa, who wrote a commentary on Yoga Sutras, and Shankaracharya, who wrote a super commentary on Vyasa's commentary on Yoga Sutras. So these are the three great thinkers, sages and philosophers. It's called the Munitrayam in yoga tradition, means the three great sages, scholars, savants, who expounded and who explained for the good of humanity the psychology and philosophy of yoga. So that is what the second verse means. Now we'll come to the subjects. Now you would remember we were dealing with this description of the 5 vrittis and also how to counteract these vrittis. So you should remember the fundamental definition of yoga according to Patanjali, which comes in the Samadhipada, is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. This is a single small definition, less than a sentence, smaller than a sentence. Yoga chitta vritti nirodha. So technically the translation may be cessation of vrittis or waves. That could be some kind of a translation. But as we proceed further, we understand how to purify our mind, as Patanjali wanted to do. How to purify the mind by removing wrong vrittis which manifest in the form of wrong thought currents. Thought currents here mean not deliberate thoughts, our natural instinctive thoughts. That will reflect our character. So, in one of the writings, Shankaracharya, he called Bhashya Vivaranam, he makes a point. The direction in which our mind naturally flows, when we are not watched or observed by anybody, that is our natural instinctive tendency. So if you close all the doors and windows in your room, you have got all kinds of books in your room. Nobody is observing. You're free to choose whatever book you want. What book we choose to read, let us say. So in which direction our natural tendency instinctively flows. Instinctive function of inherent tendencies. That is, that reflects our inherent vrittis, our natural characteristics. These characteristics are vrittis. Among these vrittis, there are good ones and also bad ones. So Patanjali will say klishtaha, aklishtaha, means two types of vrittis. Certain vrittis which are really not desirable, certain vrittis which are quite desirable. So how to transcend, remove undesirable attitudes, emotions, which are manifestations of these vrittis. And how to refine our mind by accumulating through meditation, through prayer, through spiritual practices. How to fill our mind with good impressions and good samskaras. That is called chitta vritti nirodha. So, in fact, the the subject we are dealing with is directly related to that. And then, of course, Patanjali goes on explaining once we succeed in achieving this goal, in refining our vrittis, getting rid of undesirable vrittis, transcending this stranglehold, the trap of vrittis. Our character is trapped in certain accumulated instinctive inherited vrittis and impressions. Once we transcend them, tada drashtu surupe avasthanam. That is the next third sutra, Samadhipada. Then what happens? Then we will get established in our own natural state, our real state, which we are free. We are free from these all undesirable traps of vrittis and samskaras. Otherwise, the next sutra says, vrittisarupim idaratra. Otherwise, you know what happens? Whenever our mind goes out through the channel of eyes, that is sense of vision, ears, sense of hearing, touch, sense of touching, or sense of taste, our mind is naturally flowing to the external world and connecting with external objects through or with the help of the five senses of perception. Then what happens? When we see something, our mind takes the form of that visual object. Our whole personality takes the form of that visual object. See, when we see an object, a visual object, and when we identify ourselves with that object, when we contemplate on that object, when all the thoughts and ideas that emerge in our mind get centered around that object, then what happens? That object, that visual object, becomes our personality. So our mind assumes that form. So also when we connect our mind with an object through the sense of hearing or the sense of smelling, then what happens? Our mind assumes that particular object. When we hear something, maybe a car is making a sound from the streets, and mind goes towards that. And then what happens? The sound itself becomes our personality. We identify ourselves when we completely concentrate on that mind, on that word, that sound, our mind becomes that sound. So that is vrittisarupim idaratra. If we do not practice yoga, then every day, every moment, our mind jumps from one object to another object. In this connection, one of the commentators, this Vyasa, the commentator, he quotes one verse which is quoted by Swamiji in complete works. Swami Vivekananda's description of yoga. Swamiji refers to that. The Sanskrit verse, Kapirabi madiramattu saunmattu vrschigena sandishtaha tadabi pichachagrastu vicheshtidam tasya kim prumaha. If we don't practice yoga, then what happens? That is explained here. The condition of mind. So, first, a monkey. Human mind is compared to a monkey. It comes in Yoga Vasishta Ramayana. From there, the commentators on Yoga Sutras, they refers to this particular verse, which comes in an earlier classic, Yoga Vasishta. So the verse is this: mind is compared to a monkey. So it is fully drunk, strong liquor, and then and it has gone mad. And then a scorpion has bitten it. And then on the top of it, a ghost has possessed it. So first of all, it is restless as a monkey, and then it is drunk, it has gone crazy, and a ghost has possessed it. This is the condition of a mind which moves from one object to another object, which identifies with various vrittis, various samskaras, by connecting the mind with external objects through the senses of perception. That's why Vrittis Arupyam Itaratra. So how to control the mind? That is the description in the present context. So first of all, you should remember Vrittaya Panchataya Klishtaha Klishtaha. Fivefold Vrittis. Pramana, Vipirya, Vikalpa, Nidra, Smrutaya. These are 5 Vrittis. Vrittis can be infinite in number, but all the Vrittis together can be classified under these 5 categories. That's the meaning of it. So what are these categories? Pramana. Pramana actually means a tool for perception. It is the first tool in Indian epistemology. Means direct perception. When we come in contact with an external object, and when that contact becomes cognition, that cognition can be manifold. It could be by directly perceiving with the mind and 5 senses of perception. You know about an object by seeing it, and for that, the mind and the sense of vision should come together. Or you come to know of an object by hearing, then the sense of hearing and mind should cooperate. So also when you feel the smell of a perfume or incense coming from the top floor, your mind and sense of smell should come together. If you want to taste ice cream, mind and the sense of taste should come together. Like that. All the 5 senses of perception and mind cooperate, and you come to know of something. This is the normal, the ordinary source of all vrittis. So this is called pramana. Pramana means mode of cognition. Pramada means the cognizer, and the object that is cognized is called prama. Anyway, now I shall first explain what this means in yoga philosophy. It's a bit technical subject. Direct perception is a common subject in all systems of philosophy. Aristotle has given his own interpretation. So it is a common subject all day. 3 modes of perception of epistemology are common in most of the philosophical systems. But in Indian philosophical system, some of the systems of philosophy give a list of 10 epistemological tools, and Vedanta accepts 6, and Yoga Sutra, Yoga philosophy accepts only 3. So that's an important point, remember. So Vyasa says, Indriya pranalikaya chittasya bhakya vastu uparagad. So what is pramana? It means when the mind goes out and takes the form of an object, which gives birth to what we call Vishayakara Vritti. To be very simple, you see an object in front of you, mind goes to that object through the channel of the sense of vision, eyes. Once the mind connects with that object, the visual object, with the help of the eyes, then that visual object becomes mind, or the mind assumes the form of that visual object. So that's what happens. So also all the 5 senses of perception. Tad vishaya samanya visheshatmano arthasya. So this perception, direct perception, gives shape to a vritti. Vritti means when you cognize something through direct perception, when you identify yourself with what you cognize, then the action is completed in 1 second, but that event leaves in the mental system a residual impact which may last maybe 10, 15, 20 years. Depending upon the intensity with which this cognition takes place. That's why when you listen to a sound, great musicians, when they listen to a music, great poets, when they read one verse just once, or when they listen just once, the mind and the sense of hearing come together and identify with the verse that they are hearing or the music that they are listening to, and the mind assumes that musical form, and depending upon the intensity with which this cognition happens, you listen, you will continue hearing that song maybe after several years. You need not hear it every day, depending upon the memory, and memory is directly related to the intensity with which this cognition takes place. A great musician will listen very intensely, only once, that's enough, because it means so much for him. And maybe an amateur, a person who is not interested in music, for him he may hear, but doesn't leave much of an impression. A musician's mind is ready. It's fully ready to listen to that musical piece, and it creates a great impression. So what happens? This leaves a vritti. This vritti will remain. Vritti is nothing but the residual impact of whatever experiences we go through. Need not be an experience. It could be in the form of an idea that emerges in the mind. And these vrittis will become impressions, memories, samskaras, tendencies, and we are all caught in this trap of these vrittis. So the most powerful vritti is Pramana vritti. This we have explained. Then Viparya is the next vritti. It is false knowledge of something that does not correspond to real form. Means something you hear which may not be true, but still for a split second, if you believe in its reality, though it may prove to be false later on, still that will produce a vritti, and again it get accumulated in the mental system that will enrich, reinforce or weaken our character. If an impression it corresponds to the tendencies already accumulated, they reinforce. If it is in conflict, then the existing samskaras character will be weakened. So it creates conflicts. So I have already explained these 5 vrittis. We won't go into those details. Pramana, Viparya, Vikalpa, Nidra, Smrteha. 2 vrittis mentioned, Nidra and Smrti, mean sleep and dream experience and memory. Both of them are related to different experiences. We cannot have a dream experience which is an exact repetition of waking state experience. But we cannot have a dream experience which is totally detached, which has no connection at all with some of the waking state experiences. So that's an important point to remember. Whatever dream experience we have, whatever we remember, may not be the exact repetition of what we have really gone through in waking state or in the real situation, but it will always be inseparably connected to some waking state experiences. So this we have already discussed earlier, and this kind of revision. So now in the 12th sutra, which is very important, Patanjali discusses this problem. How to get out of undesirable traps, it calls stranglehold of undesirable, unhealthy vrittis. So, to give the full picture, what vritti stands for, I am repeating this idea again. It is called a vritti, samskara, chakram, a cycle, a vicious circle, so to speak. We go through some experience. Or it could be a thought in the mind, a word we speak, word we hear, anything. All days will create an immediate experience, immediate impact at the time of experiencing this event. After the experience is over, it doesn't die out. The impact of these experiences will remain in the mental system And they actually become our character, part of our character. That impact is called a residual effect. It is called vritti. So, if it is a very pleasant experience, then we have a tendency to go through that experience again. We want to go through that experience again. If it is unpleasant, we want to avoid it. Either we like certain events that produce happy vrittis, happy impacts or impressions, or we want to avoid certain experiences which may have created unhappy impacts. Or we may avoid certain experience called raga, dvesha, abhinivesha, extreme liking for certain things, though we want to get out of it. Kind of obsession, obsessive liking, it is called raga. So if you read the English translation, raga means liking, that's a translation you find. But it is much more so in yoga system. What it means, you have gone through some experiences in the past. Now you realize that it is really not good. But those experiences have created an impact in the mental system. And you know it may not be good. You sincerely want to get out of this. But it creates a trap. So there is always a conflict, ongoing conflict, between what we want to do and what our mind permits us, allows us to do. So we are caught in this trap of previous samskaras, previous impressions. This impact is called vritti. And the vritti is related to samskaras. Samskaras become vasanas. Vasana means a tendency to act in a particular manner. Sometimes it could be in conflict with what you want to do. You may have a tendency, a strong tendency, over which you have no control. You don't want it, you know it is harmful, but then your mind won't permit you to avoid doing it. And Patanjali gives a solution to this problem. That's why the problem with modern psychology, psychiatry now, the analysis is limited to life in this world. But Patanjali takes the analysis beyond this life. There are many problems which you cannot really analyze in the light of experiences pertaining to this life. So Patanjali gives a clue. Maybe you have gone through this experience, not in this life, in previous life. That's why this eternal conflict between what we want to do sincerely and what we eventually end up doing. So the solution is Abhyasa Vairagya Abhyam Tad Nirodha. So he said 12th Sutra. How to restrain these vrittis. In other words, how to get rid of undesirable tendencies. The simple definition, though the definition itself doesn't give the full picture of the methods which are described in the other commentaries, but a simple definition is Abhyasa Vairagya Abhyam Tad Nirodha. First of all, we must practice Vairagya. Vairagya means detachment. Detachment means, well, you don't antagonize undesirable vrittis, samskaras, impressions emerging in your mind. You don't fight with them, but you don't befriend them. If you fight with them, then also you are connected. If you befriend them, of course, you will be trapped again. So how to do? To act as a witness, to behave as a witness. You are aware of it, but then you are not obsessed by it. So if we can look upon our own mind as we watch a drama going on the stage, sitting on the gallery, without participating in the drama, not as an actor, but as a non-participating witness, if we can sit in a gallery and watch the functions of vrittis emerging in our own mind, then we can practice Vairagya. Vairagya has got different meanings which we are going to discuss later. And then this should be practiced repeatedly. So repeatedly we should remind ourselves of the fact that we are not a participating actor, we are just a non-participating witness. Witness cannot participate in the crime. If a witness has also participated in the crime, he won't be recognized as witness. But you should be aware of it. When you are aware of it, then only you can avoid it. It's just like if you are driving to the freeway, if there is big crowd or bad traffic, you avoid that route. So awareness is necessary. So awareness with detachment. Detachment here means not a negative running away or willful avoidance, but rather with full awareness we look upon ourselves as a non-participant in the drama of whatever vrittis are emerging in the mind. And this should be practiced again and again. So abhyasa means repeated practice. So through repetition and detachment, we should be able to get rid of undesirable vrittis. So in that context, Vyasa gives a very famous, it is a celebrated passage in Vyasa's commentary, where he compares the human mind into a river. This river can flow either in the positive, healthy direction or also towards unhealthy, negative direction. So, chitta nadi nama ubhaya tapovahini vakati, kalyanaya vakati, papayacha. So, chitta means mental system. Chitta doesn't mean mind alone, but it means the entire mental system is called chitta. Means mind, the thinking faculty, the deciding faculty, and also the faculty that enables us retain memories, which is not included in the classical definition of mind as such. So, chitta nadi nama. So, this mind is a river. It flows in both directions, towards good and also towards evil. So, when we suddenly, if we take to yoga, one important advantage, or the first sign that you are making progress is a part of our mind detaches from its main structure and begins to act as a guiding, teaching, warning, helpmate. That's what happens. When you start praying, when you start meditation, for some time, what happens? Slowly the meditative habit begins to exert an influence on our character. When we show a tendency to do something which is not good, that part of the mind gives a warning signal, don't do that. The warning sound may be very weak at the beginning, but as we advance in spiritual practice, that warning sound becomes more and more powerful, becomes louder. I mean the big red signal, it becomes so obvious. So that becomes a great teacher. Then mind itself becomes a teacher. That was Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel. At the highest stage, mind can be your best friend when you have mind under your control. Mind can be a tyrant when you are under mind's control. Mind can be a terrible master, or it could be a very obedient friend, not a slave, but a friend. If you don't treat your mind as a friend by trying to restrain these vrittis, samskaras, through yogic practice, then mind will become a monstrous tyrant, very cruel. So, that's why Vyasa says mind is like a river that could flow. There is a potential to flow in either positive direction or negative direction. Kaivalya vak prara viveka vishaya namana sa kalyanavaka means that flow which is towards liberation. To me, liberation means spiritual bliss, liberation from these shackles of bondage. Kaivalya pragbhara viveka vishayanimna sa kalyanavaha means if it is controlled, if the vrittis are controlled, restrained, purified, refined, then mental river starts flowing in the positive direction. Otherwise, it will flow in the opposite direction. Samsara pragbhara aviveka vishayanimna papavaha. So, if you follow, if you blindly become an obedient slave of our own mind, then mind will take us over a precipice. Mind will be flowing in the opposite direction. But then there is a problem, mind is not easy to follow. You can decide what you are going to do, more or less. At the level of physical action, there is some degree of freedom, autonomy. But you have no control over what thought is going to arise in your mind next moment. So yoga and Vedanta philosophy give one solution. You link your mind to a great sublime spiritual ideal. Or try to do that. So as I mentioned, we can control in which direction we are going to walk. It is more of a physical effort. But we have very little control over what thought is going to emerge in the mind. So, and we cannot have a GPS system for the functions of the mind, movement of the mind. So what to do? Try to link the mind to a higher ideal, spiritual ideal. So that will help the mind to take a positive direction. So some higher ideal, spiritual ideal. Tatra Vairagyena Vishayasrotaka Khili Kriyate Vivekadashana Abhyasa and Vairagya Udgatide. So I'm just reading this verse is very important because the great Vyasa, the commentator of Yoga Sutras, he had given this sublime description of the functions of the mind. And he says that flow which is towards higher liberation, to positive direction, will take the root of discerning mind, wisdom, spiritual ideas. That is non-violence, truthfulness, non-possessiveness, not having desire for things belonging to other people, internal and external purity, inner contentment. All these values, Yamas and Niyamas, will help the mind to move and to flow in the proper direction. Otherwise, the mind will flow in the opposite direction. So that's the idea behind. And the next sutra defines what is Abhyasa. Tatra sthido yatnaha Abhyasa. Being established in this practice of detachment and this continued practice, it is called Abhyasa, means repetition. That's the idea behind. Through proper practice of Yamas and Niyamas, the mind will automatically flow in the direction of discerning wisdom, self-control, self-restraint, non-violence, non-possessiveness, inner contentment, and internal and external purity. The one warning that some of the commentators give is, you don't have a neutral way. If you do not practice, if you do not make an effort to practice yoga, then the mind will automatically flow in the opposite direction. It cannot remain in one condition without a change, without a moment. Mind is always looking for something. So the best thing to do is to give mind a positive direction by linking our thoughts and ideas to some higher spiritual goal through the practice of non-violence, purity, contentment, etc. Taking up a high ideal, spiritual ideal, because that will conserve the mental energy and it organize the mental energy, time and effort in one positive direction. Otherwise, mind will not keep quiet. It will automatically go in the opposite direction. If you don't allow the mind, if you don't work hard to let the mind flow in the positive direction, mind will not keep quiet, it will automatically flow in the negative direction. You cannot have neutral direction. That's the idea behind. So now we will have interaction, and then we will have, with 10 minutes we have got. If you have no questions, I will continue the text. Very happy. Yes. Any doubt? Anything? Yeah.
I'm a little confused about the detachment that you're talking about.
Yeah.
How do you see the experience that you had in front of you without being part of it?
Yeah.
I don't really...
Yeah.
Yes, I think I have an idea, but not very clear.
True. Well, the practice of awareness of the momentary nature, momentariness, the impermanence of what attracts us in the opposite direction. Remain practicing awareness. See, often we are attached to certain things under the wrong impression, wrong notion that will bring us, that is permanent, and that will give us permanent happiness of peace. That's at the root of our attachment. Every kind of attachment has this root cause. We may know intellectually that it is not permanent, still for a moment we forget that fact and we assume that what we are attached to, what attracts us, could bring us permanent peace. So we attach permanence to what is obviously impermanent. So constantly reminding ourselves of the impermanence. So that's the solution given in Buddhist tradition, also Yoga and Vedanta. The impermanence of things that wrongly attract us, either wealth, status, actions, may be in pursuit of wealth, which may take us out of our track due to obsessive attachment. So that constant remembrance of the impermanence, the transitory nature, will reduce our obsessive attachment. So here attachment should be understood as obsessive attachment, something that we are obsessively attached to, trapped into, though we know it's really not good. Every well-educated man knows that wealth and all these material pleasures cannot bring permanent peace. Everyone knows, intellectually. See, what we intellectually understand, our mind will not always permit to implement in actual life. So, to constantly remind ourselves of this transitoriness or impermanent nature of these sources of attraction or attachment is one method. Is that clear? Yeah. We have still 5 minutes, so normally this interaction helps us to clarify certain points that we may not have clarified. Well, when we remember the impermanence or transitoriness of things, then our attraction will be reduced. But then we won't run away from it. We are able to handle what we experience. Instead of what we experience handling us, we are able to handle what we experience. So that will help us to act as witness. Witness means we are able to handle, we have the situation under control, not the situation controlling us. So that's fine. Yeah. That's why the witness aspect has got two dimensions, two important elements. One, awareness of the impermanence, knowledge. Secondly, non-participation. Well, we are going through certain experiences and we are too much worried about it. Not that we should become inactive, but when we are active, when you are trying to solve a problem, when we are going through something, we get completely lost in it to the point of losing our peace of mind, whatever it is. At that time, we must keep in our mind, well, this is not the whole of life. Life has got something higher. Doesn't mean that we should become inactive or indifferent or negligent. But our intensity, obsessive attachment will be reduced. That aspect is called non-participation. It's called, Sanskrit, the word called sakshi is the word. It's called sakshi. And Buddhist tradition it is based on one famous discourse by Buddha. It's a Pali discourse. It is called Sthitipattana Suttam. Sutta means suktam. A long hymn, a long discourse that Buddha gave on perpetual awareness of mind. That is the basis, the philosophical basis of the mindfulness meditation system. Perpetual awareness of mind. Now, when the mind is sticking to something, trapped into something, then it is not aware of it. To be aware of something, you should be a non-participant. If you are playing in a drama, if you are an actor, you won't be able to enjoy the drama. You should be sitting in the gallery and watching it. But you should also be aware of what is going on the stage. Then only you can be a witness. So Buddha said, mind can become its own witness. When you constantly remember the momentariness of all these experiences going through the mental system, when you meditate, when you focus on the momentariness, then you become aware of it. If you attach permanence, then you are trapped. If you are aware of the impermanent nature, then you watch it, you get a full picture because you are not participating in it. So that's the idea behind. So means sakshitvam, bodhrutvam, audasinyatvam cha sakshitvam means bodhrutvam means awareness. Audasinyatvam means non-participation. So how to do that? I have a personality. My true nature goes beyond the physical body or by mind-body complex, which is involved in these things. Body is involved in an action. Mind also is involved in an action. Intellect also involved. But I have got a spiritual dimension that goes beyond body, mind and intellect. In Yoga Sutra it's called the Purusha. Vedanta is called Atman. That Atman goes beyond the physical, the intellectual and the psychological dimension of my personality. Once you constantly remember of your true nature, that you are the witness, you are the seer, you are the experiencer, and you are not objects, we are the subject, then we are able to look upon ourselves as the non-participating witness, and you are able to enjoy this life. You can enjoy. If you want to enjoy, then you should stop enjoying. If you want to enjoy, then you should stop thinking, you should stop being obsessed with enjoyment. Then only life can be enjoyable. The freedom from the obsessive attachment, which we normally understand as enjoyment in empirical sense, that freedom leads to another enjoyment, higher enjoyment, which we experience when we look upon ourselves as the witness. One example I can give, many of the great spiritual teachers in Vedanta tradition, they work very hard. In fact, the Shankaracharya whom I referred just now, he lived for 32 years. All the Vedanta books that we are reading today, we are reading because he wrote commentaries. All the Vedantic tradition, all the yoga tradition, even the ritualistic pujas, the most beautiful Sanskrit devotional poetry, and the most profound philosophical treatises, all these were written by him. And he traveled all over India 4 times. India of those days was much bigger than what it is now. And all within 32 years, traveling all over the huge country. So you find many great teachers, Swami Vivekananda, who lived 39 years. So you always find, if you, I'm not stretching beyond limit, but if you read the life of Jesus, you find, or Buddha, though he lived for a long time, Buddha lived for 80 years, you find they could accomplish so much within a very short time in the case of Jesus or Shankara or even Vivekananda. And they could accomplish so much in their short lifetime, because they could work so hard, and there was always an element in their system, well, this is either God's work, this is the Lord's work, or this is higher work. So when you bring God into your mental system, then you become a witness. Because the work you are doing is God's work. So that helps you to look upon your work from another perspective, as God's work, not your work. So that brings in this witnessship in another dimension. So even in everyday life, this can be practiced. I have a spiritual dimension that goes beyond the physical, the psychological, and the intellectual. So if the real I is a higher spiritual entity, and that's my true nature, everything else is alien to my real nature. Once we remind ourselves of this, then we can be happy, we can be active, we can work hard, still remain relaxed and restful. That's the idea behind. Yeah.
The Vedantic system is the Sakshi,
Yeah.
is your Atma, your consciousness.
Yeah.
In the Buddhist tradition, who or what is really seeing the mind?
Yeah.
Is it also the Atma or consciousness, or is it something else?
Yes, Now, of course, in Buddha philosophy, in the Yogacara system, this becomes more clear. These 2 schools of idealism should be the Yogacara, the Vijnanavada, is a kind of subjective idealism, and the Shunyavada, which is called the theory of emptiness. In Shunya, the word Shunya is used and often wrongly translated into English as the great emptiness, the great nothingness. But if you read an explanation of this great nothingness, it is the great everything. The Bible of Shunyavada is Nagarjuna's Madhyamika Karika, where the Shunya is explained as the non-dual, permanent, eternal, immortal reality. And the Yogacara system, there is the Alaya Vijnana, the eternal platform where all ideas, all experiences come and go in a flash. The Yogacara system, Pravritti Vijnana and Alaya Vijnana. Alaya Vijnana is the platform, the real mental system, the subject, which is permanent. And all the external impressions are Pravritti Vijnanas, means the individual impressions which come and go. So the permanent, eternal subject is always posited in Yogacara system as Alaya Vijnana, and in Shunyavada it is defined as Shunya. But Shunya is not what the word nothingness means in the dictionary. So the translation is always a problem there. Shunya is one permanent, eternal reality. How can it be nothing in the literal sense of that word? So that translation is the great emptiness, E capital, not small. If it is small e, then it becomes what we understand by the word emptiness in the ordinary language. Is a great emptiness, E capital, which is really the one permanent eternal subject reality.
How does this capital E relate to consciousness?
Yes, this capital, when you reach that stage, then you realize your consciousness. It is consciousness itself.
Even the Buddhists believe that.
Yeah. Buddhists do not believe that. But Buddhist interpretation of nothingness is not different from the Vedantic interpretation of Paramatma. See, in the Madhyamika Karika, all these words we use, adjectives that we normally use to define Atman, or Brahman is used. See, it is non-dual, it is Advaita, it is beyond empirical, it is Paramarthika Satta. Paramarthika Satta, Buddhist is the Shunya only. Paramarthika Satta in Buddhist tradition is Shunya. They have got something which is called, which is similar to what they call Vyavahara Satta and Vedanta, with the empirical reality. The empirical reality should be transcended to reach the Paramarthika Satta. So, from a Vedantic perspective, Buddhist philosophy of Shunyavada is a negative, I will say, rather it is a description of Atman in the negative language. See, Atman in the Vedantic tradition also, the absolute reality is defined in negative language. Na antaprakyam, na bahishprakyam, na ubhayadaprakyam, na prakyam. It is neither the reality, the Atman related in waking state or cross state. It's like it is neither this nor that. Like that is gone. You find it's called via negativa. It's used in Eckhart's philosophy, transcendental philosophy, which I gave a lecture, which I discussed in one of the lectures 2 weeks back. The via negative, the path of negation. To explain the transcendental, you explain it is neither this nor that, understood in the empirical sense. See, empirical sense, worldly sense, I cannot say this is neither book nor non-book. In the empirical sense, this is an empirical reality, this book. It is a book or it is not a book. But we are talking about a non-empirical transcendental reality, which cannot be called real in the sense that is relatively real, because it is absolute reality. So it goes beyond verbalization to emphasize the point that it is indescribable, it is beyond definition, beyond description, beyond explanation. The Vedantins or the philosophers say it is neither this nor that. That's what you find in, as I mentioned, in Eckhartian philosophy of transcendental being. So that's what Nagarjuna used. One reason why it came to be misunderstood as nothingness in the dictionary sense, nothingness small letter n, in the translations of Tibetan scriptures into English, they use the word voidness, the great voidness, V capital, E capital. Which actually it is not empty or void as those words mean in the empirical sense, dictionary sense. It is something that cannot be explained either this or that. It is beyond verbalization, beyond description, beyond definition. It is something that can only be experienced. To emphasize the point that it is an experiential truth, not something that could be explained, these two terms are used. That's the idea behind.
It's consciousness stuff.
Yeah. To make it more clear, if you say consciousness is real in the empirical sense, then people will think consciousness is real as this paper is real. But it is not real in the sense this paper is real. It is something that I see with my eyes and mind. So you say consciousness is not real, Atman is not real in the empirical sense, but the empirical reality is objectified reality. Objectification means you come to know of it through mind and senses of perception. But it is not unreal, because even behind this, all these empirical things, it is that reality which is the real thing. It is not unreal, but it's not real in the empirical sense. That point should be understood. What is real in the empirical sense is vyavakarika, relative. That's the idea. Of course, Nagarjuna, the philosopher of Shunyavada, the doctrine of emptiness, he emphasizes this point. The absolute reality, the Shunya, is the transcendental reality that you achieve after transcending the empirical. That's the idea behind. Nagarjuna's system is not studied in that way. That's often the translations are not always very satisfactory. Yeah, please. Yeah.
When you are seated in the seer, in the Purusha, the world becomes happiness. I mean, the consciousness that you have is a high consciousness, and you can act free.
Dukkha.
You can act free when you are seated in the Purusha, when you are continuously sitting in the Purusha in meditation.
Yeah.
When you act like in the meditation state, because meditation you can be doing it in action, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, when you meditate on your true nature as something that goes beyond this body, mind and intellect, that true nature is pure consciousness, which is the nature of Purusha. Mm-hmm. Everything else is Prakriti. So, according to Yoga system and Sankhya system, this body, this world, mind, intellect, senses, everything is an evolute of Prakriti.
Evoluted?
Yeah, everything is evolved from Prakriti. Mm-hmm. These 23 elements, the whole universe, including our mind, our intellect, all these are evolutes. First from Prakriti, Mahat, then Buddhi, then like all these are evolved from Prakriti. Mm-hmm. There is only one reality which is eternal and also conscious. That is Purusha. Prakriti is real, but Prakriti is unconscious. Mm-hmm. So how the unconscious Prakriti becomes the source of evolution, that is a big contradiction which Shankaracharya raised, and when he tried to bring out some of these aspects of Sankhya and Yoga philosophy. And from a Vedantic perspective, Yoga is important and relevant because it helps us to prepare ourselves to understand Vedantic truth. It doesn't take us to the highest realization. Yoga system, this Yoga Sutra, is a very important book from Vedantic perspective because it helps you to study our mind. And it helps us to prepare our mind for realizing the highest Vedantic truth. But it does not take us to the highest truth. Only Vedanta can take us the highest truth. So Shankaracharya makes it very clear. It is very helpful to make our mind ready. When you reach Chitta Vritti Nirodha, when the mind is completely removed of all vrittis, that means all unnecessary vrittis, the mind is ready for the highest realization.
Okay. But that is a
Vedantic truth. Yeah. It's a springboard to Vedantic realization.
But you have to go through all these stages before.
Basically, Yamas and Niyamas.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, all the Vedantins and also yoga philosophers insist, if anyone practices completely and fully if he gets established in Yama Niyama, then the mind will become automatically ready for asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana. So it's a very gradual process. Mm-hmm. When we get established in these 10 disciplines, Yamas mean ahimsa, satya, steya, brahmacharya, parigraha, mean non-violence, Then non-stealing means not having desire for things that belong to others. Then purity of life, and non-possessiveness, and then non-receiving of gifts, that means not having any desire, and purity, perpetual contentment, complete mental restraint. When we reach the beginning of this stage, we become ready for other asana, pranayama, pratyahara, etc. When we become fully established in these yamas, niyamas, then it's easy for us to reach the highest truth.
You cannot do all together. I mean, all this, what you have been saying, and also do yoga, pranayama, meditation at the same time.
Yeah. Before we take up asana, pranayama, we should have preliminary grounding in these 10 disciplines. Otherwise, it is not only useless, it is dangerous. Because asana and pranayama, any physical exercise which involves inversion of the body, and also pranayama, will create one problem. It generates heat and energy. Heat, body heat and energy. So, before these new energy resources are generated, you should close the channels for this energy to flow in the wrong direction. To give an example, if a person is not very non-violent, he is a violent nature, let us say, if he practices a lot of pranayama and a lot of yoga, there is every chance that he may become a violent person. His violent tendencies, natural tendencies will be aggravated. If a person who is not moral, well restrained, and if he practices pranayama and yoga, his his undesirable characteristics, tendencies will get hyperactivated. Because nervous system, the energy system gets hyperactivated. And then this energy and heat will flow in the wrong direction, which will not only create problem, it could be even dangerous. So before you do that, you should close the channels through which the energy may flow in the opposite direction.
So that means that there is people
through ahimsa, non-violence, you stop or you reduce violent tendencies.
Because here in the West, they don't do that kind of...
That's a big tragedy. And it is creating its own problems also.
Yeah.
So commercialization can be a big problem, If you insist on people, you should practice yama and niyama before coming to yoga studio, then yoga studios will have to be closed. But then that may not be practical, but people can be taught these basic things, Can be taught these things. Many people do that, in fact. There are many eminent advanced yoga teachers who talk about the need to practice these disciplines. There are many. Of course, there are many who may not, I don't know. But there are many wonderful, well-established yoga teachers who insist on yama and niyama. Of course, we are talking about pranayama, which involves retention of breath, which could be dangerous for one to practice unless he has got some grounding in yama and niyama. That's the idea behind. But the ordinary pranayama may have a therapeutic effect, maybe good for health, nothing wrong in it. Advanced systems, advanced practices of pranayama can be dangerous without getting established in yama and niyama. That's the idea. So thank you. So we'll continue the discussion in the next class. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Paramastu.